It's very important, in the sterling debate to make sure that no one can say that you are not committed to the currency union as proposed in the white paper. If you look at the letter, the unprecedented, the extraordinary letter from Sir Nicholas Macpherson, where he entered debate as an impartial civil servant by allowing a letter to be released. I look forward to his letter on the in-out referendum on Europe, incidentally. I'm quite certain that would be fascinating to see a published Treasury letter in that matter. I think Sir Nicholas defends his letter on the basis that it's not party political, since maintaining the union is an agreed policy of the Labour and Conservative parties. Therefore it cannot be party political. But if you look at Sir Nicholas's letter, he actually says in the letter, well, of course, the currency union, apart from anything else, the Scottish Government are talking about maybe that's not the policy. And therefore you can't be certain about the currency union, and therefore you can't have a currency union. Look at the letter and you'll see that point. Therefore, you have to establish that no one is in any doubt of what the policy position is. That is why you have to do that. Now, it's a simple matter to say, as I pointed out last night, there are options in the Fiscal Commission Working Group paper. There are four other options. One is you could join the euro, but that doesn't look like a good option, and therefore we're not going to do that. The euro has a range of difficulties at the present moment. It would not make sense to do that, so we're not going to do that. Secondly, you could have a floating exchange rate, a perfectly viable option. A floating exchange rate is used by a range of countries. But then you'd have transaction costs between Scotland and England and Scotland, so it doesn't seem sensible to do that. You could have a fixed exchange rate with sterling, of course. That is something which has worked remarkably well in a currency board for Hong Kong over the last two generations, first with sterling and now more recently over the last generation with the dollar. It's been a perfectly satisfactory arrangement. And of course, as Alistair Darling admitted himself last night, you could sterlingize, you could use sterling. Nobody can stop you using sterling. Sterling is an internationally tradable currency. That would have the advantage, as indeed the other options would, that if the position of the UK government is that we are not to have the assets, or our share of the assets that we have jointly built up on the basis that thou shalt not be entitled to your own currency, then of course we have no entitlement to take liabilities either. The letter to the Treasury from the markets in January of this year, saying that the UK Treasury will accept liability under all circumstances for UK debt. That would amount to, well, let's put it this way, if we had a zero share of debt, then Scotland would be in both balance of payments and budgetary surplus in the first year of independence. We wouldn't be paying up to £5 billion in interest payments. And that is the logical conclusion of the UK government claiming all of the assets of the country. They end up with all the liabilities, and the liabilities are extraordinary. 60% of the 1.3 trillion, that is 1,000 billion, that's 1,000 million of UK debt, of course, has been built up by two individuals. One's George Osborne, the other's Alistair Darling. They've managed to build up 60%. They have actually built up more debt in the last 8 years than every previous UK Chancellor in the entire history of the United Kingdom. So that would be quite attractive. But obviously it also tells you why it ain't going to happen. There is no way that a UK Chancellor is going to allow himself to be in a position where Scotland gets scot-free in terms of the debt, and therefore our responsible position that we put forward in the white paper to say yes, we will take a share of the liabilities in turn for our share of the assets is the sensible position to put forward. Having established, and I don't think there can be any doubt now what our policy, perhaps not even Sir Nicholas Macpherson, that we're proposing the currency union as our policy, then of course it is now much easier to run off what the options are. It's much easier because you now do that in the context of no one being in any doubt that the currency union is the position recommended by the Fiscal Commission and the policy of the Scottish Government. And the point that Bernard Ponsonby made to Alistair Darling then becomes really important. There is no doubt about that, and therefore there's no doubt about the sovereign mandate of the Scottish people if there's a yes vote in the referendum. Gordon Brown and I disagree on lots of stuff, incidentally, as you probably would imagine. But I thought, as this debate on the currency developed over the last few months, there was two quite significant events. One was when he walked off a microphone instead of, or rather than answer whether Ed Balls was right to join up with George Osborne in the declaration, "Thou shalt not have sterling, it's ours and we're keeping it." Gordon Brown walked off a microphone rather than answer that question, was Ed Balls right to do that? Because Gordon Brown, despite our many disagreements, understands that "thou shalt not" is not the best thing to say to the population of Scotland. There is a thrownness and an understanding that that is not a reasonable position.